Hello everybody and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. The market is pulling back, but we are seeing many markets shifting. ETH BTC is breaking out for the first time in so many years. We are also seeing Bitcoin dominance topping at our major descending resistance that we've been updating you guys over the last couple months. Now that we're seeing this shift, this is the moment where we expect to see a lot more altcoin profits rolling through. So regardless of this correction, I wanted to break down my favorite charts and indices that are pointing towards the bigger picture taking place and how we can look to be best positioned and prepared coming forward into the next few months of this cycle. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and with that being said, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty guys, here we are to start off today's video looking at the price of Bitcoin. In the shorter time frames, we've seen this pretty big rejection. When the ETF got approved, we saw this rejection candle, and we are currently seeing the follow through of that rejection. Now in the shorter time frames, this is all we're really watching for, is this prior range. We are consolidating between this as support and resistance for a long period of time. We had this fake breakout that led to this big capitulation, and then this is where we ended up seeing that breakout leading into the rumors of the ETF. Now that the ETF has been approved, we're kind of seeing this big capitulation, and I do think that we need to revisit this sort of range again so that we understand how to play it from here. In the shorter time frames, I wouldn't be surprised if Bitcoin bounced back up to retest this range high. If we were to reject from here, overall I would expect that we would revisit back down to this trend line, maybe even back down to the support if it happens a little bit quicker than what I have drawn right here. And then that would be, ultimately us coming back down to revisit this trend line. If we were able to actually just end up buying back out of this, reclaiming this, obviously we would expect another type of high, but it's not looking like that's the most likely scenario. On the higher time frames, if we zoom out, we can come out here and we can see that we've kind of had this main ascending support before this breakout. So to see us coming back down to this range low right here, if we were to come back down and retest that and then actually break back down below this range, I do think that we're going to end up seeing a bigger type of correction all the way back down to about 33,000, maybe even revisiting the prior highs that we broke from being about 32,000. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see that type of a move play out next. And there's really only a couple scenarios that I see happening for Bitcoin moving forward from here. Now, scenario one is where we kind of just come back down, retest this range before making one more final push back up, tag this $52,000 level before that starts the real correction back down. Or I see the scenario where we just kind of come back down, we end up breaking from this range here, and then we just start that next correction back down here. Now, what we'd be looking at would be a reversion back down to this main ascending support that we've been at. And I'd also be looking for both of these levels of the ascending support and the prior highs of the resistance, the range highs that we are consolidating below, being 32,000. I think that that's going to line up at pretty much the exact same point. So don't be surprised if we came back down and tagged both of these levels before we started that next sort of leg up to begin our cycle and do something along the lines of this. This would be the most ideal scenario. Maybe it takes us all the way into like Q3, Q4 before we're at the point of going into another breakout. And then that would be the moment where I do think we're going to end up breaking out of the prior all-time highs. I think the best scenario is that we do come back down and revisit this trend line. And you guys know that if you've been watching my analysis, ever since we broke out of 25K being right here, I told you guys our target's $48,500, and we've stuck to that same target for months and months and months. And as you guys can see, we have perfectly tagged that resistance, and that's where we ended up seeing this big rejection. So it shouldn't be, surprising to anybody why we're seeing this rejection. We had this level mapped out for the whole entire year, considering we've been at this level for considering we've broken from 25K to begin, pretty much 2023. So when we're looking at this, I think it's important that we understand that the risk is most definitely high right now, considering the majority of the profit has already been the majority of the money has already been made from this run up. We've hit all of our main targets. Whether we come back up and make one more high before that top or not, that would be the most ideal scenario for the bulls. But either way, if we do that, I still think we'd come back down and make a bigger correction where we'd come back down and revisit this trend line again. It's either we get one more high before that happens, or we're already going to be doing that right here. And based off this rejection, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see it happen right now. but we have to look at some of our other indices and charts to be able to determine, what are the altcoins going to do? Are they going to be able to hold up in this? Are we going to see alt season while Bitcoin corrects? How is this going to play out and break down? Now, when we're coming over here and looking at the chart of Ethereum, Ethereum has made this very big breakout after we finally broke out from this ascending triangle. We had this ascending support as Ethereum was growing, and we had this horizontal resistance for basically 530 days until we finally were able to break outside of that, flip it as support, and this is what's leading us into this most recent breakout. We're seeing this pullback after we tagged the bottom of this lower high being about 2,723. But in the shorter time frames, it's kind of hard to say what ETH is going to be doing. If Bitcoin goes for another high, or honestly, if Bitcoin just comes and consolidates back inside of this range for another couple weeks, I think the altcoins are going to end up running. And it's when Bitcoin ranges inside of these consolidation levels that the altcoins end up performing the best. So when we're seeing ETH just barely breaking out, I'm not going to be the least bit surprised to see this come up a little bit higher. My main target was 3K, taking us all the way up to about $3,600, and those are still my main targets. It's just that we're kind of seeing a pullback happening in here in the shorter time frame. So the big picture though is if Bitcoin breaks down from this level, I do think that ETH will, depending on the amount of time that it takes of us consolidating in here before that breakdown of support, I think that ETH could definitely extend up here a little bit higher while Bitcoin ranges. But if we do see Bitcoin break down and come all the way back down like this, I think the ETH is going to end up doing the same thing. Even though, we broke out of this resistance, if Bitcoin does that, we would expect the ETH comes back down and does something along the lines of this too, before that next leg up. I don't think it would be a bad thing. I just think that, ultimately we would just be getting that correction inside of Ethereum a little bit earlier than I initially thought, and they would end up lagging. Now, the reason why I think that this scenario is probably not the most realistic is because if we come over here and look at our Bitcoin dominance, this chart is very important to watch, considering this cycle is gearing up to be the first cycle since 2017 where Bitcoin dominance falls to a new all-time low. And we're at the very beginning of that right here. We just barely rejected. We hit our target that I've been updating you guys with throughout the entirety of this year. We finally tagged that. It's looking like we're getting this head and shoulder pattern. We have a bearish engulfing candlestick taking place right now, currently in our weekly time frame. And I do believe that this is most likely going to end up taking us all the way back down to our range lows. Don't be surprised if from the range lows we did bounce back up here again before we do start that next all-time low. But once again, the importance of this cycle for altcoins, our last cycle never went to a new all-time low. This was bearish consolidation. This was a higher low inside of bearish consolidation. Because keep in mind, when we're looking at this consolidation, all this really is just a big sort of descending triangle. We have lower highs, we have a horizontal support right here, both of these levels, but then we have lower highs and a descending resistance. That is a bearish descending triangle formation, and I do believe that this will take us into a new all-time low. The reason 2017 was so profitable, when we come out and look at the ETH-BTC pair, it was going into a new all-time high. It was outperforming its Bitcoin ratio in price discovery. And that's what was taking place throughout this entire period for these altcoins. So when we're looking at ETH-BTC today, the reason why our last cycle was so lame in comparison was because none of our altcoin charts really went into price discovery against Bitcoin. They just made these short-term consolidations. So when we're looking at this, I think that the next cycle is gearing to be so much greater in so many different ways, considering ETH right now against its Bitcoin ratio just threw up some of the biggest bullish divergence that I think we've ever really seen. And this is the first time we've seen bullish divergence on the RSI for over 6 years. So when we're looking at this, we saw ETH make a lower low in price from here to here, but we saw the OBV make a higher high. That's major bullish divergence, considering it's happening also on a weekly time frame. Now also, if we look in the shorter time frames on the RSI, the price made a lower low, whereas the RSI made a higher high, and that's what led to this most recent breakout. In the shorter time frames, this is nearing the point of us finally breaking out. I still think we're technically below it, but we are nearing a very close point of us breaking out, and I think that this is the early sign we will be doing that very soon. The great thing about this cycle, once again guys, this will be the first time ETH BTC has gone into a new all-time high since 2017, and it lines up looking at the long-term graph of our Bitcoin dominance chart, showing that this next cycle will be doing the same sort of consolidation. So where we're at right now is the very beginning. This is the very top of Bitcoin dominance before we start that massive sort of capitulation. So when we're zooming out and looking at all of these, we might not end up seeing ETH revisit all the way back down to this trend line. We might end up seeing it correct back down before making kind of a move like this, before we start to see that big correction once again. Don't be surprised if ETH does something along the lines of this before this breakout is over. I just think that with us clearing this 500-day ascending triangle, most likely we're not just going to come up to sub $3,000 and then top. I find it more likely we have another high coming, and that will be the true top. You know, I don't know exactly how Bitcoin factors into this. Maybe Bitcoin just retests this consolidation and consolidates inside of here, which is enough to give ETH that last momentum to make the higher high. Or maybe Bitcoin ends up making a higher high with ETH before that sort of correction sets in. I don't know, but that's just what I'm playing, but that's just what I kind of see happening inside of the market. I wanted to come over here and actually look at the crypto total market cap because I also think that this is a very important chart to be watching. If we come over here to a daily time frame and zoom in, we've been holding this ascending support the entire point of this breakout, and we're currently retesting it once again. We've had a couple false breakdowns right here and here with our most recent consolidation, but we're currently sitting right at that same level. We haven't really broken down yet. We haven't really done any sort of confirmation. We're just sitting right on that. So we're at a major point. If this is going to hold, then I think it'll take us for one more high. However, if this breaks down and we lose this support, I do think that we're going to end up coming back down and most likely retesting this prior high, being about $1.3 trillion. That's most likely the scenarios that I see playing out from that's most likely the scenarios that I see from here. We're either retesting this for one more high or we're going to break down, and it's all going to end up riding around what Bitcoin does. With this rejection, it's really hard to say. There's a lot of volatility inside of the market with the ETF approval. Don't be surprised if we revisit the very bottom of this support in this channel before we end up seeing any sort of a bounce. We don't know how this market is going to react with the ETF news. So far, it's been bearish, and we have filled my main target being 48,500. So we just have to be aware that the risk is most definitely higher right now. And, you know, you don't necessarily want to try and bet on one more final high as much as you want to just make sure you have profit protected. If you're up significantly in anything, for the majority of my stuff, I'm still holding it long term. And I don't have a problem holding it long term, regardless of the corrections, even if we see these big upswings in price. Unless my altcoin made a new all-time high and is up significantly in price discovery, I don't have much of an inclination to want to take heavy profits. And for me, the majority of the stuff, if not all of it, that I've bought has been planned to be held for the next 2 years, being the end of the year 2025. And I found that I've cost myself way more long-term profit trying to trade in and out of assets versus me just holding on to the crypto long-term. And that's the mistake that I'm trying to more or less fix going into this cycle. So I don't really care about the shorter time frames. I don't really care whether we reject and come all the way back down to this trend line. If we did, I think it would be great for the 4-year cycle. But for me, it's like everything I'm long holding. So if we get a correction, the short-term stuff I'll take profit on and look to buy the dips in and compound more on my long-term stuff. Maybe look to short the market a little bit and trade with leverage that way. But for me, it's more all long-term game, and I don't really care as much. I mainly make these updates to inform you guys and keep you guys in the loop of what I'm seeing in the market. So if you found value in this, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these updates. If you guys want to see how I'm investing over this cycle, any altcoins that I may be buying, selling, trading over the next couple months inside of this most recent consolidation, links are in the description, and go ahead and sign up with my website. On my website, you're going to get full access to my Discord server. That's where I post all of my charts. That's where I post all of the signals. Anything I'm doing with my money, I talk about it in there and give you guys details as to how I'm actually going to be doing it. So if you guys want to learn more, links are in the description to go ahead and sign up on my website. Thank you guys so much for the support. And with that being said, I will catch you in the next one. As always, peace out.